So how should India react? How do we navigate the shifting tides of power and security in an uncertain world? From grand strategy to military technology, from power and conflict to the unseen forces shaping our world, and from battlefields to the halls of power, we decode the past, analyze the present, and anticipate the future of global security. I am Sandeep Unnithan, and this is the National Security Agenda. It's happened to many of us. We've been added to the wrong group chat. But in this case, it was no ordinary group chat. It was a chat group comprising some of the most powerful people on the planet, discussing an upcoming military strike on Yemen. Now, a US journalist was mistakenly added to a group of top Trump administration officials, the Vice President, the Secretary of Defense, and the Secretary of State. They went on to discuss how they were going to attack the Houthi rebels in Yemen. In short, the charge is the White House texted all these war plans to a journalist they had added mistakenly to this White House chat group. Now, the White House has, of course, denied all of this. It's interesting to remember what happened 10 years ago when the Republicans had pilloried then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton for using a private email server for official public communications. She didn't use an official State Department server. As often and as always, the lessons for us from all of this. And I'm joined today by Colonel Rajan Pavitran, our go-to person for cybersecurity issues. Colonel Pavitran, welcome to the National Security Agenda.
Thank you, Sandeep. Happy that you brought me back again on your show.
You know, Colonel Pavitran, we've seen several intelligence breaches in the last couple of months, especially from the United States, where kids who've uploaded classified intelligence briefing on chat rooms. But this seems to be the mother of all intelligence breaches. Take us down through what you think actually happened over here, where this journalist got added to this chat group with top Trump officials who are literally giving a blow-by-blow account of what's going to happen in Yemen with the airstrikes and all that. And why is it such a serious security breach?
Okay, so the story as I see it and what has come in the Atlantic, this journalist Jeffrey Goldberg was added to a group by the National Security Advisor. He knew it was and he thought that it was a AI-generated group discussing war strategy, till the time he realized that what is being discussed is actually happening. So when I went through the article, I realized, how it adds on to the rule that security is weakest at the top. You might have a lot of security protocols which is rigorously enforced in organizations and people who deal with classified information. But at the very top is usually it is very difficult to enforce that. And it is also fascinating that people are using signal chat. Although the signal chat is controlled by US interests, the phones are controlled by the operating systems, the phone, etc. I take it as all US. But still, it was, for me, it's a deep insight that people added made such a group and discuss such things on a platform like this. Fascinating for me. But the security breach is in the sense there are two things out here. The Trump administration seemingly has pulled the plug on Atlantic very recently and their funding. And they seem to have added this journalist onto a group, although he's a US citizen bound by US laws.
Yes.
And he says that operational information, which is considered very, very sensitive, which would have violated multiple laws, was posted onto that group, which he did not seemingly share. So there you are. But that's US. But I'm more concerned about us, India.
I'm more concerned about that as well, Colonel Pavitra. That's the reason I want to ask you this, that, what are the lessons for India? We don't have our own apps. We don't have our own, hardware, software, none of this. We don't have our own operating system. This is a lacuna that you've pointed out several times in the past. What is the lesson for India when you're looking at leaks like this?
The leak is only one part of the story. In India, the issue is much more serious because at a national level, we are part of a global surveillance paradigm where seemingly we have taken little steps to address this. So that is serious, much more serious, and it makes us act like a digital colony of other nations. primarily the US and China. So this is something which we have to realize, that our entire discourse, our entire, ICT, information communication technologies, are like the nervous system of a modern nation. And if it is owned by other nations, you are a digital colony. All your trade, all your banking secrets, all your financial secrets, and of course your national security secrets will be known to them. They'll be able to map this out, and it's got huge dimensions. Now, you might say that other countries also have the same. Now, the biggest problem here is, okay, other countries are not like India. India is a huge civilizational state.
Right.
And it's a peer adversary for both China and the US in the mid to long term. Today, you might not be, but they will never allow you to rise beyond a certain point, because you will challenge the global order. From that perspective, to point to other states and say, oh, they also have the same thing, so we also should, does not cut ice. And this is something very serious, which I do not know why the nation is not taking adequate steps. We have many thinkers, geopolitical thinkers, etc. But when I look at the whole, gamut, very few people seem to have addressed this squarely on. It's a mystery to me. Maybe you might be able to dig it out why it is so.
Absolutely. Colonel Pavitra, that's really alarming, the fact that, we are much more vulnerable because we have none of these operating systems of our own. We don't have the hardware, we don't have the software, we don't have the OSs that most of these countries do. So in that sense, it is far more worrying for countries like us than, say, the United States, which has this, one leak, once in a blue moon kind of leak, which is worrying. But at the end of the day, as you pointed out, they control everything. They control the app. It is a US citizen there. It's a kind of a closed loop in that sense. But for us, it's far more worrying. Are these issues well aware in India's policy making circles? For instance, are India's top military and government officials on media chat rooms, social media chat rooms, which would enable them to be monitored, by other countries, as you just pointed out?
So I retired about 10 years back, so I would not be able to say that whether they have alternative secret arrangements, but visibly it doesn't seem to be so. So when we initially, immediately after Snowden tried to point it out, it was seen as a contrarian opinion. Okay, that contrarian opinion is today widely accepted. People do not anymore say, oh, you are being a conspiracy theorist. In fact, very senior and credible people have said, this looks like conspiracy theory. Today, no one says that to me anymore. But that big but is there. Why it has not, that urgent action and on a war footing has not happened is concerning. Especially since we also had a standoff with the US, with China, and the US has affected our national security in Bangladesh.
Right.
Again, things are in a flux, but I do not know. It's a mystery to me. Back to you.
Colonel Pavitran, urgent action on a war footing. What must India really do, given that you have Edward Snowden's revelations a decade ago, which told us that we are actually in a global surveillance state where you have powerful countries literally monitoring all our internet traffic. What should India do on priority now, you believe?
So there are two things which India needs to do. One is a legislative effort for protecting India, and second is the innovation effort to produce our own products. Now, both in partial measure has done, but I would not call them cohesive or comprehensive. Atmanirbhar has come out of that realization, to the government's credit, but I would say the policy initiatives to address that is fully not. I wouldn't call it comprehensive at all, including the innovation. And the DPDP Act is a work in progress. Without a default data localization, how do you protect India? People might say, oh, what is the point of a law if you cannot enforce it? But these are parallel processes. Because when you have a law, then there is an incentive for entrepreneurs to say, oh, okay, Indian equipment will be backed. There is going to be localization. People with money will invest in creating our own cloud facilities. These are all iterative processes which will happen gradually. You cannot say that we will create the whole thing and then enact the law, or you cannot complain that businessmen or entrepreneurs are not creating this, because people will look at what is in their advantage, and the state has a lot of things to do in those things.
Right, absolutely. No option but to develop our own operating systems, hardware, our software, and of course push for data localization. That's the big lessons broadly from one of the most sensational leaks from the United States, the White House leaks of national security, where a journalist was added to a chat group created by some of the most powerful officials in the United States. Thank you very much for joining us, Colonel Pavitra. The Russia-Ukraine war and the Israel-Hamas conflict have been raging for over 3 years now. Now, these conflicts have brought into focus tactical gear worn by soldiers. Now, tactical gear refers to specialized clothing, equipment, accessories, protective gear, tools, and backpacks, which are built to provide functionality, durability, and protection for soldiers. Unfortunately, little attention is being paid to kitting out our soldiers and special forces units in India. But this is rapidly changing now. There are today a range of Indian startups in the military space dedicated to making tactical gear for Indian soldiers. I caught up with one such startup, Armor Sen Tactical. I met their founder, Vinayak Sen. Let's listen in. Vinayak Sen, who's the proprietor of Armor Sen, which makes cool tactical gear for the Indian military. Vinayak, welcome to News 9.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me how you began this fascinating journey of making cool tactical gear for the Indian military.
So, my grandfather, Brigadier K.P. Lahiri, he was a war veteran, a war hero, he was awarded the Veer Chakra as well. So, ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be like him, and I was always tinkering with equipment. You give me a backpack, I'll open it up, make it into a harness, any straps I could find, any ropes. So I was always designing equipment till much later in life, where I finally built a little bit of equipment for myself, never thinking that it'll become a business, and happened to show it to a family friend of mine who was in the police at the time, and he said he wants to procure it for his team.
Right.
So very quickly I had to figure out how to start a business and how to get into manufacturing.
When did that happen? Which year was
So
this?
this was the year 2018, 2019.
Right. Not very long ago, just about
not very
6
long
years ago.
Yeah. So
But Vinayak, the thing is that everyone's fascinated by guns.
Yeah.
Of course, we got very excellent replicas over here. But equipment is not so cool. Is that the reason why the Indian Armed Forces, we got some pretty cool weapons, small arms, but the gear, well, the jury's out if we've got the best gear in the world, the kind of tactical equipment that we're wearing. How did you go towards the gear side of things and not the guns and the fancy equipment and the tactical stuff?
So the simple answer is barriers to entry.
Right.
Right. Before getting industrial manufacturing licenses and big factory setup, this was the easiest place to enter, right?
Right.
And I have always found gear very, very cool, right? Guns
Yeah.
are cool, of course. Everyone wants to have
Yes.
their own range of guns.
Right.
But I found gear to be very cool, and it was relatively an easier entry point for me.
Right.
And since I was already building it myself, I just felt that there's so much that again, this should have been done 20 years ago, to be very honest.
Right.
Right.
If not 40 years ago.
Yeah, right. And to be very honest, there is no rocket science in what we are doing.
Absolutely.
Right? It's been done. We have enough precedent to follow across the globe
Right.
To understand what has worked, what has not worked. And when it comes to defense products, I've always said that, first imitate, then innovate.
Right.
Because they've already, some concepts, if they've already worked in combat, there's no reason for us to reinvent the wheel. We learn
Right.
from them, we understand them, we put them into our own scenarios, and then we tweak them as per our own personal
Absolutely.
requirements.
And there's that very famous saying about the Indian soldier, and this was said after the 1962 war, that the Indian soldier has everything except courage. He lacks everything except courage. So I think that the writer of that was talking about the fact that equipment was not there in 62, and that seems to be a constant problem with us.
Definitely.
That while as soldiers, we have the best human resource possible, the equipment is always catching up,
Yeah.
So tell me what I've got on me right now. What have you made me wear? I'm kind of weighed down under about 10 kgs of gear.
Right. So, which is why I wanted you to experience the kit in an outdoor environment.
Right.
Right. Because it gives you an idea of what our men actually have to face.
Yes.
Right. Now, imagine you're wearing all this equipment and you're climbing up a mountain,
Right.
or you're wading through waist deep snow. It's an extremely difficult thing to do, right? So what we specialize in, right, is we customize equipment depending on where the user is placed, right? So whether it is in a high altitude environment, whether you're doing CICT operations, you know, in close quarters, whether you're in a maritime environment, you're boarding ships. So very recently, if you've seen the Marco's operation where they parachute in and
the Gulf of Aden.
That's correct, right? So a lot of the kits over there that they're using, there are kits, you know.
Right.
So we customize it based on the environment, you know.
Oh, right.
And what you're wearing right now is called the SF rig. The SF rig is the Special Forces rig. Rapid interchangeable gear, right? Because every part of this kit can be removed, right, and can be replaced by a different part.
It's modular.
It's completely modular, right? Every single thing that you see on your kit, you know, a lot of times people see our kits and they get a little overwhelmed thinking, yaar, itna kuch hai, there's so much going on, right? But this is just to show you how much equipment you can carry.
Absolutely.
Right? But if you do not require it, every single piece on this kit can be removed, replaced by a simple version. So we build kits independently depending on the loadout. So Special Forces, we have a different type of kit for them. For infantry, we have a different type of kit. For armored, we have a different type of kit. Depending, you know, so in, say, mechanized infantry, they're in a tight, small vehicle that way, right? So we can't give them all this bulk. It has to be designed separately.
It has to be form-fitted and all of that. So tell me more about your clients, Vinayak. Who do you sell your gear to?
So we started with the Madhya Pradesh Police, the Hawk Commandos, back in the year 2018. And very gradually we moved over to Marine Commandos, which is something that I've always wanted to work with.
The Indian Navy's Marine Commandos.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'd always
very fine unit.
Very, very fine unit. Very forward-thinking, very modern unit. And they have a niche for, you know, getting the best equipment in the market. And, you know, no holds barred. So that's why I always wanted to work with them, and we were very lucky to have gotten our first few contracts with the Marine Commandos. And slowly from them, word of mouth, etc., we moved on to the Para-SF, a variety of the different Para-SF units. We work with the infantry, we work with Ghatak, we work with mechanized infantry, even artillery for that matter. We started doing some work with them as well, which I wasn't expecting, but that's something that's also come into the picture.
So your clientele seems to be largely Special Forces.
It definitely is, because the utility of most of this gear is with the Special Forces community. Right? Because whether it is in high altitude or behind enemy lines or jungle warfare, you will see the Special Forces always leading the charge. But that being said, I am very impressed by the way the infantry has also decided to adopt a lot of tactical gear. And the procurement has been fast, you know, it's not, you know, a lot of red tape. So I've been very impressed by the infantry, and I will give that to them. Apart from that, we also do a lot of work with private companies. Private companies in the defense sector. So it's not just limited to, you know, making equipment for the forces. So they say there is a private company that wants to put together a radio pack or a complete drone unit where their carrying case has to be designed, etc. So we do that kind of custom work as well. But yes, Special Forces is our forte. That is who we spend a lot of time with on ground. In the environments that they are in, to understand what the problems are they're facing. Like if you're wearing your kit, where your radio should be positioned, where your magazine should be positioned, which orientation your magazine should be positioned, so when you're moving and reloading, it's easier, it's faster. So we understand these things because we spend time with them and do the drills that they're doing, and they're kind enough to have kind of included us in those exercises as well.
So it's a two-way process, you're saying, that it's like you're always in touch with the military to understand their requirements. Give me an idea of how you changed your gear based on the inputs that you received from the military, the Special Forces units that you're in touch with.
Sure. I mean, I'll give you a very simple example, right? As you know that we are in the midst of procuring a variety of assault rifles. So we've got everything from 5.56 to 7.62 39 to 7.62 51.
It's a nightmare, I'm sure, for
you know,
gear.
Exactly, right? So when we design something, we have to keep in mind, like my magazine pouches, they can hold all three. They're designed to hold all three. But there is another important factor. It's the length of the magazine. I should have enough to grip. Right. So an AK magazine will come up till here, 5.56 till here, and 7.62 51 till here. Any shorter or any longer, I won't have the proper grip when I'm removing the magazine, right? So these are small things that we have to look into when we're putting our kits together, because we've got such varied amount of equipment in our forces, right? Then comes the factor of grenades. when we were
Right.
designing our grenade pouches, we were still using the old school grenades.
Yes.
But while we started, the Shivalik grenades have come into the picture,
Right.
in offensive and defensive mode.
Yes.
So our grenade pouches are designed in a way where you can use the old ones, the new ones.
Right.
You can use chili grenades, smoke grenades, everything within one simple structure.
Right.
So while we're spending time with them, we understand, okay, this is what's coming in, this is the new issue,
Right.
this is the environment they're working in, and we make tweaks. So just earlier when we were discussing, I was telling you about recent feedback we got from the forces about our shoulder pads, right?
Right.
So we can't just look at this as an entire kit. We have to look at it as parts.
Right.
And improvement happens part by part. So when we got feedback on shoulder pads, we started working on that. So what you're wearing and what I'm wearing are different.
Right.
I'm testing this all as we speak,
Right.
when we're moving around, just to see how this is better than the previous one, right?
Right.
So there are small things where people may not consider to be very important, but we listen to that, we pay attention to that, and we try and fix it, looking at each part independently rather than as an entire system.
Right. And as are we watching your growth and rise of Armas and Tactical. Thank you very much for your time, Vinayak.
Thank
It's
you
such
for
a
having
pleasure
me.
to talk to you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Justin Trudeau stepped down as Canada's Prime Minister in January this year. Now, India's relations with Canada nosedived under Trudeau's 10-year term. Today, India's relations with Canada are as bad as its relations with Pakistan. India does not have a High Commissioner in Canada or in Pakistan. With Pakistan, we know the reason: Pakistan's sponsorship of cross-border terrorism. With Canada, it has to do with Canada's vocal support for Khalistani separatism. Canada has accused India of assassinating a Khalistani terrorist, Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Of course, it hasn't provided a shred of evidence to back its allegations. Prime Minister Trudeau said Canada had what he called credible allegations of India's involvement. Trudeau expelled 6 Indian diplomats, including the head of the mission, forcing New Delhi to do the same. Now, Trudeau was replaced by Prime Minister Mark Carney in February, just last month. There's a hope that ties between India and Canada could be reset after the elections. The elections are due on the 28th of April, less than a month from now. And just then comes this bizarre claim. The Canadian Security Intelligence Service, that's Canada's spy agency, is warned that India might try to interfere in its elections. Now, this is not a new allegation. Canada has accused India of interfering with its elections in 2019 and in 2021. The Canadian government ordered an inquiry into this alleged electoral interference by India. What evidence did it provide? Well, in January this year, a Canadian Parliament report said that India had interfered with Canada's elections, but it could not affect the outcome of the elections. But this report did not provide any evidence of the so-called electoral interference. What evidence does it have to show that India will interfere with the elections in 2025? It doesn't hope to provide any such evidence because, as Vanessa Lloyd, the deputy head of operations at the Canadian Intelligence Agency, said today, it's often very difficult to establish a direct link between foreign interference activities and election results. This is a repackaging of Justin Trudeau's truisms, credible allegations. The more things change in Canada, the more they stay the same. That's all for tonight. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you the next time with more insights and analysis on the national security agenda.